Ever since I was a young boy, I remember my parents taking us to church. I spent the first 12 years of my life growing up in the state of Iowa, and when I was a kid seemed to be pretty good. I remember being involved in a lot of activities and sports, and tried to be a good student, got really good grades in school. I was even in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and so life seemed to be pretty good for me as a young boy, and but it probably was mostly just on the exterior. On the outside, things seemed to be pretty good. Like a lot of things in life, they're not always what they seem on the outside, or not always what they appear. And I remember the first time that I was introduced to perversion, and my friend had introduced me to pornography at just a very young age. And I didn't even realize that it was wrong at the time necessarily. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I just knew that I didn't want anybody else to know about it. And so life kind of continued that way. There were a lot of things that were behind the scenes or under the surface that were going on, and this perversion and unfortunately even with some abuse ended up affecting a lot of the members of my family. In 1996, my family moved from Iowa down to Phoenix, Arizona, and I was only 12 years old. And it was like at this time that everything changed in my family. Every single member of my family seemed to go in a different direction. Everybody started to do their own thing. And this is when I first learned that my brother was smoking pot. And I remember my dad started to drink again at this time. And my mom started to abuse prescription painkillers. And I also was introduced to drugs at this point in time in my life as well. My brother would come home from work, and he would get high in his room late at night. And I remember he came home one night and he came into my room and he told me to come with him. This is the first time that I ever used drugs in my life, and it's at an exceptionally young age. And my life started to go that direction from that point. And I remember I started to make friends with people that used to do the same thing. And let's just say that we weren't good kids anymore. We started to do some things that were wrong. So even though my parents were off doing their own thing a little bit, they saw that I was headed down the wrong direction. I was 13 years old, and they tried to intervene and put me into a drug rehab program. And it was a Christian program. And this actually was a bright spot in my teenage years. God dramatically touched me at this point in my life. I remember getting saved when I first entered the program. I gave my heart to Jesus. And this whole time I was in the program, I just remember feeling alive. I remember just the joy of salvation, and it's the first, that's why they call it being born again. But the problem was that when I got out of the program, I went back to the same circumstances, the same environment, and started hanging out with the same people again. So soon after that, I ended up going back to doing the same things. But the problem was that I didn't stay the same. I ended up getting a lot worse, unfortunately. And if you were to fast forward through the next 8 or 9 years or so, all you would see is progressively more and more drugs, more and more perversion, more and more immorality, more and more crime, more and more rebellion, more and more secrecy, more and more shame and guilt. I just ended up living in a world of darkness. I had already gotten 3 felony charges and been in jail a few times up to this point. But this time, I ended up going to prison.